It is live.
我们已经开播了。
需要使第3页 PPT 记得转一下。
Yeah. Nice. See it?
Is it showing in WeChat now?
他们应该微信也直播，您可以在那边看。哦，开始了。
So Ben.
Yes.
It's on live.
Okay.
Okay. Shall we start now?
We will play a video first. It will last for like 2 minutes. Then once the video ends, you can start with the introduction.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to IFLA APR Talk and Share August session. The topic of today is landscape architecture education on brownfield regeneration for sustainable development in China. I'm the moderator Chuan Fu from Beijing Jiao Tong University. Let me introduce the speakers first. Professor Xiaodi Zheng. She is the Vice Chair of the Department of Landscape Architecture, Co-Director of the Center for Brownfields Research at School of Architecture, Tsinghua University, and the Deputy Secretary General of the Chinese Society of Landscape Architecture, and also official representative of the IFLA APR in China. Professor Ying Zeng. He is Associate Dean of the School of Architecture, China Academy of Art, and now is Deputy District Manager of Dongtou District People's Government of Wenzhou City temporary. Professor Neil Kirkwood, he is Charles Elliott Professor at Graduate School of Design, Harvard University, and member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And Professor Luca Fabris from Politecnico di Milano, he is Beijing appointed foreigner expert, visiting professor at the School of Architecture and Landscape Urban Planning, Beijing University of Civil Engineering and Architecture. They all have more than 10, even almost 30 years of experience in brownfields education and research. Before we officially begin, let me briefly introduce the place where we are holding this event. Today is a rare occasion. All of our speakers are gathered in one room located in Dongtou District, Wenzhou City, Zhejiang Province in China, joined on site by 30 students. And Dongtou brought in a turbulent waves of the East China Sea over 30,000 years of fishing history, with a combination of hundreds of years of Fujian and Zhejiang culture. There are more than 300 ethnics sitting along the coastline, boasting great view and scene. Dongtou is an island district. To reclaim land from the sea, it must quarry stone. Guided by ecological civilization and the sustainable development in China, ecological restoration of the territorial space has been elevated to national strategies. The remediation of brownfields, such as quarry sites, has attracted widespread attention, becoming an essential component of Dongtou's future. It is here that we launch our international workshop, themed Sea Garden, the Rise of Art and Design in Brownfield Regeneration. The workshop runs from July 31st to August 4th and brings together 30 students from Tsinghua University, China Academy of Art, Politecnico di Milano, Beijing Jiaotong University, Nanjing University of Astronautics and Wenzhou Ken'en University. They were organized into 6 groups using a cross-university mixed model. In addition to today's invited speakers, the workshop mentors include Professor Kang Ying, Xu Xin, and Shen Tong from China Academy of Art, along with me. Today's talk and share session is an integral part of the workshop. The program also features a keynote speech from Professor Neil Kirkwood, field studies of local culture and brownfield sites, studio design work, and final pin-ups. Through this workshop, we aim to advance landscape architecture education on brownfield regeneration for sustainable development in China, and at the same time generate innovative regeneration results for Dongtou District. Okay, first, welcome Professor Zheng to share with us.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks IFLA APR for the talk and share platform. And also this event is hosted by the Chinese Society of Landscape Architecture. As Vice Secretary General of CHISLA, I warmly welcome everyone online and offline to join this event today. And my talk, the title is Teaching Brownfield Regeneration Through Thought and Action. So I will be introducing a graduate course that I'm teaching in Tsinghua University in Beijing, China. And then the subject I'm teaching is brownfield. So that's the type of sites with known or potential contamination. It's challenging, complicated, but then also full of potential. So how do we teach? Let the students know, and then also to envision the future of these sites is actually what I would like to introduce in the following slides. To talk about the course, actually, I have to go back 9 years to 2016 when we held the first international conference on brownfields regeneration and ecological restoration. And Neil, you can recognize yourself there. The reason is, during this first brownfield conference, at the end, we had a declaration, and then we actually listed 6 points. They are support a detailed survey and involve all related sectors, take a long-term view, ensure a regional and holistic approach, and then also raise public awareness. But what I want to emphasize is actually the sixth one. And I remember clearly, Neil, it was you who actually proposed that we have to put it in the declaration. That is to revisit and facilitate revisions of academic pedagogy and the curriculum setup to be in line with and advance required new knowledge associated with brownfields regeneration challenges. Because for the future generation in landscape architecture, these type of sites will be the kind of key parts of what they will practice towards to. So to help them to actually know about the challenges and then also how we tackle them at school is very important. So the conference was in 2016, and then later on in 2017, I started my course. So I will give a course overview and then the 3 important aspects of the course and then a brief summary. So the course started in 2017, and then the title of the course is Transformative Landscapes, Multidimensional Theory in Landscape Architecture, and it's mainly for the first-year graduate students in MLA program and also open to doctoral students. Over the years, there are also graduate students from architecture and city planning to join the course. And for that course, we set the course objective, of course, for them to learn all the knowledge associated with brownfields, but then also to have them to be able to critically think and then do the research and then also to be able to design and express. More importantly is actually to understand the relationship between human and the natural environment, because brownfields is really one of the most challenging sites in that relationship. And the key words for my course is thought and action. So these 2 actually words will go through the entire semester for the students to learn. And then the kind of form we take is a learning-centered teaching model. So it's a participating learning model. And then I will be talking about the 3 key aspects of the course. So the first one is listen, read, debate. Because brownfields is a really complicated subject, it does touch upon many aspects of our knowledge. So in all through the 8-week course, we will actually give lectures on different subjects, including contamination and remediation, landscape strategy, ecological. Oh, actually, Neil, that's I think the semester when you came and gave a lecture to the course. And then also for the different types, the industrial, the mining, and then the landfill, and then also for land art and the stakeholders. And through the course, besides myself, I also invite experts in different fields, for example, in environmental science, and then also in the laws and ethics aspects. And for each week, we give reading materials in advance, as in many lecture course. And then we ask the students to submit a reading feedback. They have to be critically think about the subject that's going to be taught about in class. And then we will invite several students to actually express what they wrote in their writing feedback. And then it would be brief discussions in class. And also through the semester, we organize 2 debates in class. So students will be in groups. And for these debates, the subjects we chose doesn't have to be just for brownfields. It can be a very open kind of hot discussion in the area. For example, is landscape architecture a science? And also, can landscape architects be replaced by AI? So through these debates, students, they form groups and they can really try to establish their statements and then also to defend them. And I think that's a very, very useful practice. And to really know brownfields, you have to be in the field. So in the course, I organize a tour to one of the biggest brownfields regeneration projects in China. That's Shougang, the capital steel factory in Beijing, to the western part along the central axis. And in the map, you can see that there are three key parts we visit every year with the students. A, B, C, D, those are actually kind of where it's comprehensively developed with the new uses. And then a very important part is the location of E. That's actually the soil remediation factory that's located within the Shougang area. And it's very important for the students not only to see how this site can be regenerated into new landscape with new functions, but also they need to know soil remediation needs to be taken critically and scientifically to support this to happen. So during the site visits, we will go up to see the kind of new form of the regenerated blast furnace. And then when you go up, you can have a very good overview of the entire region. And then I take the students to the thermal kind of remediation factory. And here, we actually can see the noise and then also, how the machine works. And then we also take the students inside the monitor room of this factory. So there will be technicians who explain to the students how it's happening and then where the soil go after it's remediated, become a clean soil. And then the third important part of the class is actually a design workshop we held. So not only for them to be able to think, to see brownfield, also what are you gonna do? We're in the field of landscape architecture, right? So we have to be able to envision the new future for them. So this is actually a half-day workshop. So it's very important for the students to know that it's not a studio. You do not do it like over 16 weeks or 8 weeks. This is only half day. So your quick, first strong initial reaction is very important. So one workshop we do is actually to imagine a sanitary landfill close to Beijing. And then they work in groups. They use the clay to kind of try to imagine that's actually the landfill, and then we actually limit the boundaries. What can you do? What you cannot do? And also they have to be able to think about, the contamination and then the height of the landfill for their future proposed use. And then we also, in collaboration with AECOM and Jianhua, a construction company, in the year 2021, we held a concrete forming workshop. So that's for a mining site and a very interesting and exciting process for the students actually to be able to cast their concrete model in class and then to show what they envisioned for the site. So besides all these activities in class, each semester we actually also hold 2 movie nights. So on the right actually are all the movies that we have been seeing. And then after each movie screening, we would have a discussion with the students, because I think it's very critical for them to grasp the really kind of hot feelings right after they see the movie and then the storyline. So in summary, these are feedbacks from many of the students who have participated in the class. So I think it's important for them to know brownfields outside of the classroom and to be able to think about it, to investigate it, and then also to debate about it and to design for the future of it. So in summary, for our course, through the different subjects, the lectures, and then through the listen, read, debate in the field and design workshop, we're trying to help the students to learn in a close kind of interaction between thought and action, for them to really understand the subject and to prepare them for the future challenges they would feel. So actually going back to the workshop we're here today, so I think it's a real pleasure to have faculty members and students from 4 different universities gathered here in Dongtou to actually see and then to think, to design for the different proposals for this area. And also I would like to kind of announce the 5th international conference on brownfield regeneration and ecological restoration. And I think people are also see it in the video we just showed. So this will be held in collaboration with Politecnico di Milano, and it will be held in Milan on October the 6th to the 10th. So everyone is welcomed, and we hope we can actually get together and have our wisdom to tackle the challenges of brownfields. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Professor Zheng, and we'll have the Q&A and discussions after all the talks. Next, welcome Professor Zheng Ying.
Okay, thank you, Professor Xiao. This overview, I think, is like a very excellent brownfield teaching. It's very organized system. It's Tsinghua style. Okay, so my name is Ying Zheng from China Academy of Art. So I think for me, learning and teaching brownfield is almost 20 years. I think 2005, when I was studying at the University of Pennsylvania, I learning brownfield is from Chris Reed and William Young and those guys. And of course, like a manufacture side, those like giant writings, books is we reading. Okay, today I like to focus on some thoughts. I think I will give like 4 thoughts. Have been like 20 years. Mostly I focus on in my university, it's kind of the fine arts university. So this is my topic, landscape architecture education on brownfield, 4 thoughts. Okay, first thought. For me, I needed to talk with my students, my professors, what is the brownfield? This is really important, the definition. And the second, I need to talk about why we need to talk about this in architecture school, especially in China Academy of Arts. Since right now, the land is very limited and almost is more occupied. Even the economic transformation, we have to the new situation, but the land is already used. So we cannot just thinking build some new building, new park, because the pollution, the contaminant. So that's why I need to describe what is brownfield. So I don't want to go detail, but mostly 种地 and brownfield. So you can know this. And other things, how to define. They have some specific definition, and also they have some like, it can be extended according to situation. So mostly brownfield is this kind of 3 type. One is the quarry side. It's like we have a studio in the mining, the quarry, the iron quarry. The second is like the post-industrial side. It's like some the factory manufacturer side, and then they move, and then they move to the another west side. Or it's kind of the post-infrastructure side. It used to be high-rise building, high bridge, and then it's demolished. And third one is the landfill. It's like we have many trash, make the trash mountain, and these 3 types is mostly typical brownfield. So when we discuss what is brownfield, what is exactly brownfield, I think this can be make it more clear. Second, for me, I think when I was a student, I asked my professors, we are landscape architect, so we do the concept, we do design, we make some, but what's the difference between Brownfield project and with the normal project. I remember one is the professor during like the national conference, they talk about, they critique one project, it's really well done, great concept, great site situation, everything is great. But last minute, he said, this is Brownfield. And then the professor said, no, it's totally wrong. So this is very important. We cannot make normal design in Brownfield, since Brownfield is pollution, it's contaminant. We need to define where is the high pollution area, where is the middle pollution area, where is the low, and then what is the remediation technology. And then you need to combine remediation with your design thought. It's not just the one single line you need thinking. You need both interval thinking and also combine the process, the remediation process, how to use this. I remember I asked previously, I say, so if no landscape architect is what's going on, he told me, it could be like make some red line here, no entrance, maybe 10 years, 20 years. But if you have landscape architect, they can have a process, which means first year we're doing some like area. The second or to 5 years, we're doing some the middle area. For those high contamination area, we cannot work just the see. We cannot go through. For those very low area, maybe after one or second year, people can use it, use those space. So this is different. Yeah, I bring my students go to countryside. We find some like the brownfield in the countryside. Since the countryside brownfield is mostly it's a very small area, and then it's people ego know is just the planting some things, and then we think about how to deal these things. And also it's like when used to be those the factory give many benefit for economic benefit, but right now we think about okay, we shut down the factory, and then we need to think about how to reuse it. So this is about some side, and then we need to think about how to make the clean the soil, how to combine the remediation technology with the landscape design. This is my students' work. So if you have this kind of a thought, you cannot just make it a normal park, a normal landscape. The third one is I'm thinking about when I was a student studying Brownfield at Japan, and then right now I'm teaching at CAA. What's the difference? We have like the workshop course with the 2 months. It's 2 years. Compare students, and right now I'm teacher. So some sort of the teaching type is different. So the question is the keywords. One is the remediation technology. The second is the context. This is the last 2 years. We have a workshop with 2 months. We went to Fanshan, Iron Quarry. As students, we have a few this is we divide A group, and my students sketch. But the question is, first, we start in the context, what's going on the site, what's the history, what's the local culture, and then we pick technology. We pick the remediation technology. And then when I was students, we have like almost 20 years ago, it's different way. The site is like Far Brook, North California. This is the site, the aerial view. See, but we first study technology. We have 1 month. We never go to site. We just study the technology. Each student pick one technology. For me, I'm do some research about phytoremediation. And my classmate pick another, like capping or another, each do some research and introduce. And after like 1 month, we went to site. So first technology, second is the context. It's different. It's phytoremediation. This is my studio work. It's 20 years ago. So stage 1, 2, 3, 4. Each color shows the different the contamination. It's high, middle level, and this is the site. So the source 4 from context remediation technology to the beginning of landscape design. I still remember when we have the final review, our professor asked, so your presentation talk about the remediation, talk about the phasing, but no landscape. This is really questions. So this is my students' work and about the sound. And this is readings. It's really important. And also, I think we learning more from this kind of the case, like the Peter Latz Duisburg Park, Richard Hager Gas Works Park, and Jim the Fresh Kill, which also manufacture site, the book by Neil Kirkwood. So conclusion, for me, I think that generally the sort is one. I think it's a field trip is very important. We need to go to the site, sees, touches, and learning everything rather than just stay in classroom. The second, I think it's the cross cooperations. We have studio, we have workshop, we have theory, we have media. But those things need coordinations. The studio is give some idea, is the design work, and then make some new park. But the workshop is kind of to give you a new weapon. You can use it. But the theory, you're learning from the giant, learning many famous things. And the media is like about the communication, how to present your project. So those type of the course should be like think about how to coordinate. Okay, I think this is my thought. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Professor Zeng. Let's welcome Professor Neil Kirkwood. Okay, yeah. Page down, page up.
Forward?
Yeah.
Backwards, okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Professor Neil Kirkwood. I'd actually like to make comment on the first two presentations, which I think gave the audience, both here and virtually, a very good kind of overview of brownfields in education. So I don't want to repeat what has been said. I maybe want to start with two little stories, two little narratives. The first one is way back in the 90s, when many of our audience here were not even born. I used to go to parties. I used to go to cocktail parties, and I talked to fellow professionals, not in landscape architecture, but in, let's say, in law or in medicine. And as it is, they would say, "Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. And you say, well, what do you do? I'm an expert in brain surgery." Okay. Or I'm Mr. or Miss So-and-so. I'm a legal expert in divorce law or something. And they say, well, what do you do? And I used to sputter through this definition. Well, you know, I work on these sites that have pollution, and they may have old industry on them. And after about 2 minutes, I kind of give up. And they kind of lose interest, and they walk away and talk to somebody else. So I thought, I have to think about this. What is it that we do term brownfields is not known by 99% of the world's population. Let's be very clear about that. It really is not known as a term. And so I had to kind of invent a term, and it's not a very good term, but I said, well, you know what? I really work on contaminated real estate. Oh, I understand that. So that's the first question, the first little story. So it suggests to all of you that if you are working in this area, it might be useful to have your own definition of what it is actually you do, that general public, other professionals can actually understand. Number two, the second story, is my engagement with the landscape architecture, other professors, sometimes older professors, my senior professors. Again, I tried to explain what I was doing, and I was told by someone, I won't name who it is, because he may be known to many of you. He said, Neil, stop doing that. This has nothing to do with landscape architecture. You're wasting your time. It sounds what you're doing is really in the engineering school. And we don't want to have engineering, remember, this is back in the 90s, in the topic of engineering entering into landscape architecture discourse. You're weakening the profession. And he wrote me a letter, actually. I still have the letter, which maybe I should frame one day and put on the wall. He went on doing what he did, which was probably larger scale regional planning. And I went on working in this area of brownfield. So let's say just a couple of things. First of all, if you look in the history of landscape architecture, the word brownfield will not appear in your history books, okay? You won't find it in the 19th century. You won't find it in the first half of the 20th century. And it might make an appearance around 1980, 85 for the very first time. The term itself, which is actually not a design term, is actually a legal term. And it's a term that is actually defined by government agencies dealing with the environment. It's actually characterized, the term and definition is actually written by a lawyer. I know the lawyer, okay? And it's part of the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States definition, along with some definitions that came from Canada and Germany and Holland. So what does that all mean? Well, what it means is we're still struggling as a field with what it is its definition through design, and also what does it actually mean? In fact, in many cases, brownfield is used as the opposite of greenfield. And there's a certain understanding in the field of what is greenfield. You know, it's an undeveloped field. Brown is actually, quote, the color of the soil that is exposed by some activity, whether a building, an activity, an industry, an extraction industry, or a filling process of waste. So my advice to all of you, particularly young landscape architects, students, graduate students, and practitioners, is don't get kind of hung up on the definition. Use the legal one because it's easier. Okay. So I started working on brownfields. I was in practice in landscape architecture for about 12, 14 years. Then I've been in academia for 35 years. My first brownfield project before the term was used was actually in 1979. It was a mining site in the west coast of the United Kingdom, and it was a reclamation project using remediation technology. We didn't know the word brownfield, and candidly, we didn't actually know what we were doing at the time. We were kind of making it up as we went along. It was a recovery project for us, mining works. Fast forward, I started courses, lecture classes, seminars, workshops, and studios that I'm going to show very briefly on the topic of brownfields, starting in 1996. But as this image shows here, I want to suggest that the activities of reclaiming land and landscape started much, much earlier, but just didn't have a name. Photographs are 1920, the beginning of the 20th century, and it simply shows a classic before and after. Before is a polluted riverway on the left in the Bronx, New York, and on the right is a landfill site, and below is the recovery, the restoration of that land through, in many cases, not landscape architecture, but actually by engineering techniques. I have no idea who did this work. I have no idea which firm, which company, whether it was a city government, whether it was a private company, but these photographs exist that people were thinking about the recovery, let's call it, of post-industrial land throughout the 20th century. So it is not of our time, it is not of our period, it has been happening much earlier. The second thing I want to say, and maybe advice to both of those who are joining us online and in the classroom here, is that brownfields, I would determine for you, is a mirror. Now, what do I mean by that? Brownfield reflects, like a mirror, everything else that is happening in society, culture, design, education, and academia. So, for example, there have been different stages of evolution. Right now, brownfields is reflecting climate and climate adaptation. It's reflecting concerns of equity, the idea of social equity, of who are you designing for? Are you designing for the very lowest in society as well as the very highest? Issues of infrastructure, issues of change, issues of ecology. So in a sense, brownfields has had to take everything that is being taken and thrown at landscape architecture and working it through these sites, which is just a kind of interesting idea. So very quickly, I'm going to show three quick things, very quick slides of 3 studios, one in India, one in Korea, and one in Thailand, just to see the type of engagement with the graduate students. So India, okay, India. This was a design studio done in 2006 or 7, yeah, 2008, in Mumbai, former Bombay. And so the mirror here is actually poverty. This is how people live in parts of India, parts of Mumbai. They live on the railway tracks. The tracks are covered in trash. They have no access to water. The air is polluted, the sun, the ground is polluted. So the brownfield problem through the studio is addressing those. The whole of the city is a brownfield. This is some work actually by Lena Cho. Lena Cho is a now associate professor at University of Virginia, a very wonderful teacher. And this is her work as my student in looking at kind of a strategy of proaction, protection, and then projecting forward, particularly flooding and water issues, and developing a typology of remediation strategies on the site. South Korea. I like to work on sites that are impossible, that people hate. Students hate them because they're so difficult. This is the border between North and South Korea, called the demilitarized zone. It's 4 kilometers wide, 284 miles long, and it has 3 million landmines planted in it. This place can kill you. This place does kill people. And so the question is this a type of brownfield? And my argument is it's holding a mirror up to the idea of unification of the Korean Peninsula, the idea of a military site, which is one of the types of brownfields. I take the students on site. They have to be very careful. They don't kill themselves because there are mine zones there. And they do projects to do This case, the brownfield is reflecting the idea of social fragmentation, the idea of what happens when unification might happen. It is not for me to suggest how unification will happen. That's a political and military issue, but what will happen to the land that's polluted. And so this is work by the students looking at the idea of, touching lightly on the land, remediating the mines, remediating the soil. Thailand, this is a more recent project in 2023 called Bangkok Remade. This is the Chao Phraya River. And again, the mirror here, again, we're back to our issues of poverty, of social equity in a port area called Klong Toi. It's soil remediation, it's flooding, it's air quality, air pollution. Through all three studios are design studios. What is the landscape architectural design approach to this? This happens to be our dear colleague who is off camera. His project for the Klong Toi area, which is again dealing with issues of equity, tenure of land, security, crime, many issues that actually are really very difficult to deal with, but through the lens of brownfields. So brownfields can take on the mirror of many issues. It also includes the abuse of women and children, crime, many things that are not really discussed within the brownfield context. This is his project, also dealing with extreme climate in a deltaic landscape. The ideas of monsoon flooding. The city has gone underwater 5 feet in 2011. So this is real. This is not. So in conclusion, I would ask you to think about not brownfields as a separate topic or issue within landscape architecture, but actually as something, a mirror. Maybe that's the word today, a mirror that reflects all the other issues that are happening. Some of them not in your own field. And I'll leave you with one final place in which brownfields is now starting to be thought of. It's a very odd place. It's a very strange place, but it's a place you all know. I have a friend in Boston, Massachusetts, who's now doing the study of brownfields in outer space. Up there. What happens to the satellites? What happens to all the junk from rockets that's up there? It's actually polluted. Who owns it? What happens if Chinese rockets are hitting into Russian rockets, are hitting into American rockets? I'm sorry to become political about this, but quite simply, the outer space is the next brownfield. And maybe those of you in the audience here, the young people, as well as online, will have to work on the brownfield called outer space. So good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks to Professor Neil Kakut. Welcome Professor Luca Fabris to share with us.
Okay. I think that I can go. So thank you so much for calling me here. It's really an honor to talk and share something about my way of teaching. First of all, I'm coming from Italy, from the Politecnico di Milano. Something that is a little bit different from my colleagues is not what we are doing, because I think that really we are all fighting and all teaching very, very interesting things about the brownfields, but it's just the organization of my university, because in the Italian university, any university can be professionalizing. So really, it's just that we make the students study and at the end also be prepared for the professional work. But we are not creating a profession, let's say like this. On the other side, it's just that I'm an architect, first of all, and I'm teaching environmental design, both in architecture and also in the new master. It's new because it's less than 10 years old, the master in landscape architecture at the Politecnico di Milano. So I think that I have to do this. Okay, so one moment, because more or less I think that we are not talking, I think that really this thing could be interesting also for the people that is at home, let's say, and so on, is really because we are presenting a little bit the same things, but really with some little points that are a little bit different point of view and so on. So really my history, because the in Italy, landscape architecture was only taught inside architecture, and on the other side was something that was related only to the history of the gardens and so on, nothing really about the modern. So I arrived, I'm talking about the 90s, early 90s, about in a moment where really we were listening as a students that there was something that was really happening around the world and so on about the landscape. That was the new landscape arriving, the landscape that our students know very, very well. And also that there was this needing to find a solution for a lot of places that in Europe we had and so on. One of these was in Germany, and we all know, because more or less this one is just has been presented as a name, is the Duisburg National Park North, but also the Hampshire Park on one side. Then, okay, I was doing wrong. Okay, here is correct. That is not correct. Okay, so really this was part of my thesis, but this is just something that we talk. And really, I'm very proud, sorry, because after a longer while that I was one of the first in Italy to talk about post-industrial green, because this is the translation, and then also about the technology of architecture. I'm very, very happy that Professor Zhang was talking about technology, because really to work to teach to the architects and landscape architects. On the other side, also now I'm collaborating with China, so really you can find also this thing. About, for us, I mean, to me to teach, I'm not teaching these kind of things inside the studio, so it's an elective course where the students are coming to listen about the evolution of the brownfields, so let's say, the evolution of architecture together with landscape architecture in embracing problems and so on. This is just something that was quoted before, that is the gasworks parks of Seattle. I had the great fortune to find and to talk and really to write a book about Richard Haag, and really that was to me amazing, also because it was really explaining me something that was about the history. Now we talk about here, there is Professor Neil Kirkwood that has written this beautiful book that is Phyto and so on. But really, here there's one of the first, if not the first, phytoremediation system that was used. It is very, very important from the historical point of view. Here you see this image and so on. And as Professor Kirkwood said, they didn't know what they were doing because they were experimenting. So this is something that more or less, all my colleagues, I've showed to you how much is important experiment on the field. Then, on the other side, from Italy, when I did my PhD, it was 93, 96, really, all these things were a little bit new and also were not labeled, because today, more or less, it's just that if you write brownfields, you find avalanche of things about and so on. At the time, and still now in Italy, we don't use anything that is nothing to do with brownfields to define these places. Really, we say that are places that are without a use, and so really are sometimes are not industrial, sometimes are not even places that are not used really. So, but that we know that are negative for the pattern, the territory where we are working. This is just something. Here we are in Dongtou Island, really to work over mines and quarries and so on. This is Creta de Coll in Barcelona, and really this project was really today is a wonderful. This picture was taken in the winter, so believe me, during the summer this is a place, is a open swimming pool, is a public swimming pool and so on, but you can recognize this was one of the first projects and so on. I'm sorry for the terrible pictures, I don't know what happened here. Okay, everything is okay, and so on. This is in Barcelona. It was one of the programs done during the Olympic Games from the '82. So that's why it's important, and you can also have the idea of the year. Always in Barcelona during the, for the same reason, there was also the sea side was just renovated in this way. And this was another time, more or less, just like in Germany, something that was very, very interesting, because also there were the relics, so the things were maintained there and so on. So also here, there are landfills, other things inside. So I go quick because I use a lot of images, so you can see this is just an intervention that is very, very interesting. And then something that really I like to collect and just also to tell to my students always is what is done in Germany, not in the Hampshire Park, but in another part of Germany, the one that it was the Eastern Germany before, and this is just the work by the people of the Bauhaus. That was really to bring the people there, the participation, and saying, it's possible to see a future, because on the other side, I think that, you know, when you do a project, you think about the project in a positive way and really find the positive things. So when you see brownfields, you have always to be thrilled about what you can do, because at the end, you can also manage to do the new biggest chain of lakes in the middle of a country. This is in Germany, where you can go by boat from a place to the others in places that were like this, beautiful to be seen, but completely wrong from the environmental point of view. And now these are just things that they've done. I hope that imaging is arriving and so on. So really, landfills that are becoming lakes, pits, sorry, that are becoming lakes, and lakes that now are creating tourism from something that is bad, find the correct way to show to the people that it's possible to leave these spaces and be in these spaces. Then coming back, I think that we are almost very, very quick. It's just because I'm from Milan. I just brought witness of what we are doing there. We have no super spaces. I mean, nothing like China and so on. My colleagues are from Shogun that can contain not half of Milan, but a third for sure. So little spaces that are just, so these are just the first from the 70s and really are pits on one side, but also really post agricultural land that is being reused to become places like this that are parks beloved by the people, where they go, you can produce, you can walk in the middle of the forest, but you are always inside the metropolis and so on, and lakes, other things and so on. Or something that we imagine, this is Bovisa area, that is the one that I studied when I was a student, as a PhD student, but now Politecnico is bought, and we are doing this thanks to a project by Renzo Piano Building Workshop, and really inside these things, Renzo Piano has decided that really this green has a value, and this is something that we have to preserve. So this will be the new Politecnico. For the people that will come to Milan, we will see the first phase of this that is just on production, so we'll be ready, should be for 27. Then, last things, from another part, this is just a landfill that is new, is a project of, the project is from the 2020, but really the housing was ready last year. And this is just a project by Cucinella and with a landscape that is by Michel Devigne, that really is very, very simple. Also because another thing that we know very, very well is always that when we work with the landscape, we have to wait a lot. So really, this is just what could be maybe in 30 years. For the moment, is something that is very, very simple, but is something that is also open to be changed in time and so on. So I think that I arrive to the end of this kind of running thing and so on, but really, oh no, just two things. Okay, we are famous for forest, and also this is another brownfield that now has became the super center of Milan, where all the people is coming, and then we can talk a lot about this, but if you're interested, just contact me online and so on, because this is just a little miracle, let's say, that's happened. And for the rest is really, my message is just that think about what you want to, the relation that you got with nature, the relation that you got with the environment, and if something is broken, that is just the European Convention of Landscape, is you don't like what you're seeing from your window, you have only to work about to make it better. That is what all my colleagues are saying. So thank you so much for the attention. I think it's really time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Thanks for Professor Luca Fabris, and thanks for all the speakers, thoughtful and provoking talks. Please step on the stage. And the next part will open up for a more discussion. And I'll now read the questions coming in through the live streams. And students here, please raise your hand if you have a question as well. The first question is, wait for a minute. It's from the Chestnut Stream. Yeah. This is a question for Professor Neil Kirkwood. What key similarities do your brownfield regeneration courses share across different cultures?
Thank you for the question. In these situations, of course, what you do is you rephrase the question, which is, looking at the similarities or even the differences across looking at brownfield sites in the courses I teach, whether studios or the lecture class. One of the things that has actually annoyed me so much over the years is when a student comes to me, probably my student, okay, so I let you guys off the hook, and they say, I have this project here, I'm working on this studio site, and I want to Duisburg the site, or I want to gasworks the site. It's the turning these kind of case studies into verbs. I want to Duisburg the site, and implicit in that is the idea that from a site in Germany, under German law, German planning laws, German legal frameworks, they have extracted some visual or formal qualities that they're going to then take to a site in, say, North America or elsewhere. Please don't do that, okay? I think what I've done is, and I have cast my view over a kind of global places. So I do work in many parts of the world. And in each place, I have to understand the legal and planning frameworks. So for example, a site in Shanghai can be looked at, but through particular lenses, but maybe it cannot be transferred to a site in Pittsburgh. Even though there are visual similarities, they're completely different in terms of the legal framework, the financial framework, the planning framework. So my advice is that wherever, and what I found in my courses, is that I always put that information in presentation of case studies, I put that up front so that students can understand. Now, the other thing that as landscape architects, we're also very aware of is that even the basic concept, we've heard a word today in actually all the presentations, which is nature. I can assure you nature in North America is actually considered quite differently than nature in China. It's actually first of all, it's a cultural construct. It's a word that was invented, and it's actually viewed quite differently. So even if you think about the outcome of a regeneration of a post-industrial site using nature synthesis, it's completely different, because the North American view of nature is so completely different to the, I'll even call it broadly Asian, which I don't like that word, but let's say the Chinese or the Korean or the Japanese or whatever view of nature. So I think as you go forward, be very careful. First of all, this generation has access in a way that my generation never had to information through digital media, internet, etc. You can access any site. The sites that Professor Luca has shown, we can just research them now. We can go on, we can find images, and etc. Be very careful about appropriating them, because you have to understand what is the legal framework, the planning framework, the financial framework behind them that produces that. So be very careful. A steel site in Tangshan or Pingshou is very different to a steel site in Pittsburgh, is different to a steel site in Milan. And they look the same, but they're not the same. So again, it's just a plea of articulating where something is in the world and what is the framework it sits in.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions here? And maybe I would like to ask a question for all the speakers first. In your presentations, we saw design studios for the undergraduate students and design studios and theory seminars for the graduate students. And Brownfield is inherently complex. In teaching, it offers multiple perspectives and layers of content. When we face students of different grade levels, how should we choose our teaching angles and structure our course to best train their thinking and advance their abilities? Okay. Who want to take the question first? Okay, Professor.
Thank you. So the question is very interesting. More or less what we are, I mean, I'm talking as an Italian always, I'm from the Politecnico, is really that in all our courses, really, we got an approach that is transdisciplinary and also interdisciplinary. So really it's just that to make the student conscious that really they cannot find the solution, but they have to collaborate with a lot of other specializations and a lot of experts to work then. So really what I try to do, and really more or less all the teachers we are trying to do, is really to not solve the problem, but find more questions about the problems that have to be solved by other people. So really sometimes I cannot do in my course something like my colleagues, so it's not a studio, but really maybe when we have the works for the final degree, other things and so on, really we call other colleagues to give good advice, just to not make wrong things, but also really also to let the students understand that really the problem is that one, but really the solution is super wide and have to be counted, because of course there are the laws, the other things and so on, but really there is always also the social aspect, the environmental aspect, then maybe the pollution aspect, that this could be different from that. And in the question about the nature, because really, of course, nature is seen as different, is felt in a different way in any place, and so on. Sometimes is the approach cannot be always the same, but could be a good school, a good analysis to find what are the common things that are connecting the various things, and then really know how to apply these things in your place, but with a collaboration with the others always.
It's easy for carry this. In my university, sometimes we mix undergraduate and with graduate. This is two last recommend. Since it's the senior undergraduate student. So the question is, we didn't define this is talk about this is a studio, sometimes this is the theory, this is media. Sometimes we mix also. Since we ask reading some things. And the other things is, I think the most of the first is like you need to really analyze what is the existing conditions, what kind of type of pollutions, contaminations. This is the first things. The second, we need to understand how many types of remediation technology, since different questions, different site conditions of different contaminations, they probably have like the pick perfect remediation technology. For some side questions, maybe use capping is better. Some side maybe use phytoremediation is better. So we try to maybe give our talk like from the resource from the American EPA. They have a bunch of technology. They can understand these things. But so the students ask, we are landscape architect, but sometimes the technology is a scientist. Why we need to learn in this? Since it's very important if you know this kind of technology and know how it works, the process, step 1, step 2, then you can take advantage, combine your landscape design idea. So normally we spend more time explain technology, and also try encourage students can put both line interwoven, figure out the problems. I think this is our case. Okay. So the course I just introduced is open to graduate students in Master of Landscape Architecture in Tsinghua University. And I'm also teaching I'm teaching actually a liberal arts course that's open to the entire university, actually mainly towards students outside of School of Architecture. The course name is The Way of Landscape, Nature, Design, Man, Woman. And also in our department, we have another bachelor course that's called Introduction to Landscape Architecture. I'm participating. So in those two undergraduate courses, I would also touch upon the subject of Brownfield Regeneration, but it's not a course particularly only for this subject. And Chen asked the difference between undergraduate and graduate course. Actually, I think I'm gonna start the answer with the similarity between these two, because I think for both it's actually important to raise curiosity of the students and actually to expose the complexity behind this issue. It's not for them to just take simply, oh, if we change an abandoned mining site into something green, then it's regenerated, it's okay. I think it's not, that's kind of the misunderstanding we have to prevent. So in both cases, in what I'm teaching, I think it's important, as what Neil mentioned, for them to understand the legal terms and then the ethics and also the remediation technology and the design kind of strategies, the land arts and all the stakeholders, the social aspects. So I think it's actually important for them to understand how many factors and how many aspects actually you have to take into consideration for them to be able to understand and tackle it. And then the difference, I think, would be for the graduate students, I would ask them to think more critically. So it's not just taking whatever you hear in class or whatever you see in the field. You have to question it. How do you feel? What's your first instinction? Is there anything the professors are teaching that you think maybe doesn't really make sense or you feel differently? So that's why actually in my class, there are the parts of the debates. So I think that's actually very critical for the students to be able to establish their own understanding and their opinion, and then start to form their vision for this subject. Yeah.
I have a slightly different way of looking at this. The studios you saw in my few slides were graduate students. My courses include undergrads, not many, a few undergrads from Harvard College, and a few doctoral students. So I got across. I find the distinction between them is much more from a university administration point of view. I see no difference between the students. The undergrads bring great intelligence and creativity, and sometimes they have to shake the doctoral students who are too rigid in their thinking. And I would ask the audience, both virtual and here, to think about a parallel career, a parallel profession. How do you teach medicine? How do you teach surgery? Now, unless you have a doctor in your family, it's probably not something that has kind of come to you. But I spent a lot of time looking at how medicine as a parallel profession is taught in a university. In 1850, landscape architect, 1850 in North America, landscape architecture was parallel to medicine. They were equal. Because at that time, medicine believed, doctors believed, mostly practiced by men, that there was an energy that flowed through the body. They didn't understand blood circulation. They didn't understand the brain. They had not advanced, cutting people open, doing dissection. It was still there was meant to be little animals lived in your stomach. And what has happened since remember in 1863, Olmsted was building Central Park in New York. And you're thinking, why did landscape architecture not develop as medicine? Medicine now is, you know, you can have people looking at DNA of tissue. They have advanced an incredible arsenal of research, an arsenal of medical schools. And I actually study the curriculum of how you teach doctors now. Year one is the basic subjects, chemistry, biology, et cetera, in the classroom. Year two, rotation in hospitals. They do surgery, they do pediatrics, they do geriatrics, and so they get exposed. So it's very a practicum subject. I ask each of you online and here, how do you teach surgery? You can watch a video of surgery. You can practice on an orange with a scalpel. You can watch another doctor doing surgery. You can look over their shoulder. But one day, somewhere, you have to pick up a scalpel or a laser and cut someone. Okay? No amount of courses in ethics, in health, is going to prepare you. So it is about technique. And I would say that in the courses I teach, particularly brownfields, I'm teaching technique. I'm teaching them how to do the surgery in landscape architecture. I'm teaching them literally, this is what you do. You've watched me do it. You've watched Peter Lotz do it. You've watched person X and Y and Z in the different case studies. But one day you have to pick up a pencil and on a site that you have been given and make a mark, do something. How do you do it? And what are the tools? What are the knowledge areas you need to know in law, environment, remediation, chemistry, biology, structural engineering, infrastructure, community law, etc., so that you can pick up a pencil and act in a professional manner. That's the task. You wanted to say? Oh.
Yeah, we have more questions from the IFLA APR live streaming, and named Sylvia. The comment is, Professor Kirkwood, I have the book you co-wrote with Kate King with phytoremediation in order to use plants to remediate soil. It takes so long to remediate. How to convince client to wait more than 10 years?
Okay, so the book that she's referring to, first of all, thank you for the question, wherever you are. The book is a research I was doing at the time. Kate Kennan was actually my student and then became a practicing landscape architect. Her office, Offshoots, is actually a design office in landscape architecture in Boston, Massachusetts, that actually focuses on plant-based remediation as the focus of their office. The book uses or introduces plants in remediation. Some plants take 10 years, but some plants take 3 months. It all depends. It is pollution specific, location specific, and plant specific. So there's no generalities. Plants in a colder climate grow at a different rate and actually take up contaminants in different ways. So how do you convince the client? Well, it's very simple. You phase it. In other words, you say, this is what we can achieve in the first 6 months. We're going to use brassica very quickly to take up some lead and cadmium. Then in the next 3 years, we're going to use low shrubs and smaller trees to uptake the plume. And in 10 years, you'll have a vegetation infrastructure that will actually reduce the pollution in the ground from 250 parts per million to 6 parts per million. So actually a way of convincing the client, and some clients cannot wait that long, and that is okay. Then you can use the remediation approaches that were previously mentioned. You can dig up the soil and clean it off site. You can do any number of things. You can use thermal, you can use electricity, you can use chemical, but they are much more expensive. And so a client would have to know that it will cost times 10 or times 100 or times 500.
Thank you. There is another question for Professor Luca and Professor Neil. What are some key differences you've observed between Chinese or Asian and Western approaches to brownfield regeneration?
Not too much. Okay, so they pass me the ball. The no, more or less there is something that really is connected to what was saying before Professor Kirkwood, is really to the question that was saying before Sylvia. It's just that that depends also on the place, of course. I think that this is just coming from your country and your situation. But really, if you're talking with people that is coming from Europe, more or less it's just that you can convince the people because they have to do it, because by law they have to do this. So really, at the end, the question is how much it costs and so on. 10 years for phyto remediation could be saying, okay, I start to do, then also we got the times. And the times are, to me, the answer to the second question. It's just that normally in Asia, the things are really happening so fast. I mean, we know when I'm talking about China because I'm here in China, when the production is started and when it was finished is so quick. I mean, in more or less in 20 years, 50 years, everything is happening. Then in America was more, in Europe at least 50, 70 years. So really, this is to me is the most important factor, because at the end what happened that because Asia is always running, I mean, I'm talking really as a European and I know, but really, your countries are really running fast, both to create, let's say, or to have problems with the environment, but also I think that now all of us, and because this is a planet problem, we want to find solutions. And here you are running faster than us, more or less. Also because sometimes we are a little turtle, or just, I don't know, something that goes very, very slow, but more or less we had more time to see what to do and so on. That's why there is no really answer to this question, to me, because more or less it's something that is always individual, depends on the places, on what was done there and why is polluted. If it's polluted, sometimes also, just like here, we have seen a place that really is a brownfield by definition, but more or less is not polluted. So it's something that you can reclaim, or just you can really reuse in a very different way, and very, very depending of what do you want to do. These are just the keys. So really depends always on what is there. Then from a little thing, it's not advertising, but really there is a paper that I've written with my colleague from Beijing, Zhejiang Province, so the University of Civil Engineering and Architecture, Li Monixing, that really is trying to do the I don't know, the frame of this kind of evolution, keeping in mind what's happening here, there, and so on. And I think that this could be a kind of solution. I don't know, maybe I just enlarged the problem.
I think Professor Lucas's answer was a really good one. I just add, I've been coming to Asia since '99. It's 26 years, so I have seen great change. I would say one thing that distinguishes one from another, and that is leadership in China. Leadership from president down has been very focused on the environment. Leadership at the regional level, leadership at the mayoral level, leadership in universities, leadership in programs and research centers. And I am absolutely in admiration for the way in which China's leadership at all levels has actually taken on board the contemporary concerns of the environment, certainly in a way that is quite different from the European context. I actually am European originally, so I can talk a little bit about the European context, but in definitely the North American, which has been stopping and starting, and right now, without saying anything, we're kind of going backwards a little bit, and that is just what it is. I have no control over that. But I would say, although it might be frustrating in some times, I think there is really wonderful leadership, and I think helping the landscape profession, helping those professionals, you young professionals, that are going to be addressing these sites. So I'd say that for me is the kind of difference.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from the workshop students.
First, thank you for the lectures. And my question is for all the speakers. It's about our site. And what I would like to ask is, in these 10 days, before to come here, I have a small trip in China, and I saw actually in these 10 days, 2 different uses of stone. One is stone used for as the framework of beautiful gardens, stone as a sacred sculpture in the mountain. Stone is untouchable in that case. Then I arrived here and we went to our site, and I saw a place where stone is extracted. So my question is, how this conflict can help us to establish a new connection with the environment, and to guide us and to find a new balance with the environment, and in which direction do we have to go?
Thank you.
Give your name and your Riccardo. Riccardo from Milano Politecnico of Milano. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm talking too much.
I think that's a very good question, and also welcome to China, I think, for the first time, yeah. So I think it's great that you're here participating in this workshop. And I think it's actually a very interesting observation, because actually in the year 2023, I took my students to Italy because my team was invited to participate in the Venice Biennale. And then during that trip, we actually visited the quarries in Carrara. Yeah, so it said that that's where the white marbles were taken for the sculptures made by Michelangelo. Of course, I understand there are some debates about, where exactly the stone were. But then I think it's very interesting when we were standing on top of the quarry, and it's all white and it's carved out. But then you are not just looking at a quarry site. You are thinking of probably that's where Michelangelo stood, and then pointing out that's the piece of stone I want for a certain part of sculpture. So actually in my team, we have research that's actually on the subject of material flow. So stone is one type of material, but sometimes is an industrial material, for example, to construct all the buildings and then the infrastructure we use in the city. And sometimes it's a culture kind of carrier. So, the sculptures or the private gardens you see in Suzhou, and sometimes the stone itself becomes the sculpture. Right, so we have in China the tradition of appreciating kind of a wild carved out stone by the flow of water. So in many different types. So for brownfields, I had a question asked to me by one of the students. It's actually a very interesting and tricky question. He asked that, so in your opinion, do you want brownfields to disappear? It's a very interesting question, because I understand, because he's asking, so your research subject is brownfields. If there is no brownfields, what are you going to do, right? But on the other hand, you are talking about regenerating brownfields, so you should wish that they disappear. And my answer is that, as long as us, the human being, we live the way we live, we do need resource and materials. So in a way, it's inevitable that some brownfields will appear. And then I think the critical thing is actually how we tackle the afterlife of them. What's the future of them? So I think that's kind of my own, I hope, somehow answered your question. Yeah.
Very quickly, let me try and directly answer your question, engaging with the environment. and Xiaoli used the word called material flow. One of the things that is one of the mirrors that I use, is held up right now to brownfields, is the idea of resources. And the idea of putting a carbon number on your project. What is the amount of carbon expended in moving material either on the site or off the site or around the site? Where does it come from? There was a condition in the United States in the 80s and 90s where every plaza was built with Goa granite. Goa is mined in India. It is then shipped to Italy to be worked. Then it is shipped to the United States. It's still cheaper than mining American granite, but the amount of energy that was dispersed into the environment through shipping, through moving, through trucks, is terrifying. And you start to then question, why do it? Is that the way in which the world is going to go forward? In terms, so I would say that the stone, I understand both the symbolic aspects of stone and the more functional aspects of stone. Another way of looking at stone as material flow, and the idea that each of you in the 6 teams could actually define, using actually, I think the IFLA even has a formula of what is the carbon number of your project. And therefore, is it a way of balancing one project against another? So that's how then you could engage in the environment and the issue of stone, also the issue of water, the issue of granite, of cement, the issue of wood, etc., etc. So,
something. So I just take not Neil. I just come back to Zhejiang. To me, really, one of the solution is just also that is always the question about the memory, because something that we have understood starting, I mean, from Europe, and also from America, about the places that are brownfields is always that you have to maintain something that keeps alive the memory of what was the use, because this thing maybe was an industry and so on. I remember the first time that I went to Shogun with another students, not Tsinghua, another university, but really we did some interviews to the people that was there, and they were there because they said, we are bringing here our grandchildren to see the places where we were living and working, and now they became a monument. And this was really super proud, the people of this. But the same you got in Germany, in Italy, and so on. Sometimes really there are some places that are completely well done from the point of view of reclamation, blah, 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 but there's everything, there is no more memory. So also in the place that you are studying here, that you're finding a solution, you got this, because something that is not opinion, it's just because I know, I'm proud of this, that you arrive to Carrara and you think about, wow, Michelangelo has touched this thing, maybe in another layer, but this thing's there. I'm just, you're an architect, wow, this thing is gone to Oslo, and Snow has done the grassroots. So these are the things. This place, more or less, is just, I know that when they say to us, this was just something that they've taken and they've done a landfill in the sea. So it's nothing, but at the end, they change Dongtou, they changed the island. So it was something that was useful. It's something that is not a memory, is there, is really just change the position and so on. So this thing was useful for a moment, and at the end was also with a kind of history. So this is something that maybe you can also celebrate. This is something, because also the humble things could be important, because if I'm calculating the amount of the mountain that is just disappeared, but it's not disappeared, it's just Lavoisier, it's just going in another place. I think that we have seen the landfills of this kind of Dutch polder that we have seen on the other side of the island. So there is always a memory that have to be, let's say, I'm talking like in American, celebrated in some way. Could be something good. I don't know if you want to add something.
Thank you for coming Dongtou District. So my advice is like, when you think about to design, maybe you instead say what the Dongtou you need. So for the future vision, Dongtou have 2. The first is called, we say, sea garden, or the garden of the sea. This is the first things. The second, because here is like the called international eco tourism island. So why people need to come to here? What kind of a program they can enjoy it? And then just in Dongtou, but they cannot find this kind of program in other area. So maybe this can helpful for you. Thank you.
Actually, I just want to add one thing, and it's a word of caution. Okay, and here I slightly disagree with my colleague here, which is okay because this is what we do. We have discussions and discourse, and we are still friends, but we can disagree. Be very careful about memory, because there are good memories and there are bad memories. We keep showing Duisburg project by Peter Lotz. If you understand the history of Duisburg, it is actually a terrible memory. Tyson, which is a company before World War II, made steel and carried right through the war. They worked for the Nazis. They employed Jewish, Romani, and Polish laborers who were worked to death in the steel yard. Peter Lotz has talked about this, the idea that what memory are you evoking? Are you evoking the memory of slave labor? Are you evoking the memory of the extermination of the Jews? Or are you evoking the memory of a steel company which after the war, ironically, continues to work as a defeated country? So again, it's just a caution of whose memory and what memory.
Okay.
Brownfield has that because many sites, many, and Brownfields brings that up because many sites have this duality. If you ask a community around a brownfield site, people will say, yes, my father used to work in the factory. My father used to work in the mine. That wasn't always a good memory, you know. But again, it's just for you to be sensitive to this. I'm not telling you to do one or the other. Just be sensitive.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the answers. And as the time is limited, so we could only open up for one more question. And those whose comments I haven't, please feel free to contact us via email. And welcome to Minnan Conference, and we could talk and communicate in face. And the last one question, I think we should open for the audience online. And this question comes from Huang Weishan. In what ways do these workshops seek to connect with the local communities surrounding the polluted sites? This is the next question for all the speakers. No.
Do you want to answer?
No.
This workshop, yeah.
Jody,
This workshop.
you should answer it.
I think,
Should be us.
Ying should be.
Yeah, it should
These
be,
workshops, the workshops.
It's about the workshop.
You show in your
Oh,
presentations.
oh,
All the workshops.
Not just these workshops, but these workshops. So all the workshops we show the studios.
So the question what? Question what?
Yes. What is the dealing with the
How
community,
connected with the
local
Yeah,
communities,
connect with the local communities.
if the surrounding places are polluted? What is the
In
relation?
what ways the workshops seek to connect with the local communities surrounding the polluted sites?
This is good questions. First, I think when we pick this site, we talk about the surrounding neighbors. They have the running business guy, they rent like the hotel, and they have some thoughts, say this is a great place, have a good sea view, and they want more people come here so they can get more money. This is one voice. The other things, we know they have like very local villages, but it's almost empty. Only have some few senior, the grandma, grandpa living there. And they just really care what's going on. on the quarry site, and they have, because they have a huge noise, and they have a big truck. They think about we are like make great disaster. They want back to the peace, like the small village before we come here, like disturb. So, but right now, the economic issue, this area definitely need the development, and maybe we think about the new program is how to combine the also benefit local community, local villages. So I think it's a challenge, or it's also it's opportunities. We need to talk with different people and listen what they thought, and then you can make some new ideas for project. That's my answer.
Can I say something in the middle? Okay, so about the polluted places and the community, I'm talking always as an European, more or less in Italy, but most part in places in Europe. The people is very, very concerned about what is the state of pollution around any kind of sites and so on. So they are just using associations, other things and so on to make pressure to the politics and the policy. And sometimes is the university is just the cushion that is just in the middle, because we collaborate a little bit with the administration and we are called by the associations to find the solutions just to promote these things. So really, sometimes it's not really that we are the ones that are discovering the problem. Sometimes we are just, the most part of the time we are called because the people is conscious that there is a problem that have to be solved, and they want to find their way, or just to propose their way, or to propose more ways to solve the things that maybe sometimes in our system is a little bit different, that politics are not really solving this way. Doesn't matter if there is always a law that they say that there is a pollution and you want to do something new. First of all, you have to do the remediation. So this is just, but how to arrive to the remediation could be also from the policy, the local policy, sorry, bottom up.
The logo of Harvard University is a Latin word, veritas. Veritas means truth. And it's the idea of the university, whether it's any of the universities that we're engaged with, being a neutral vessel of knowledge to serve the community. So my simple answer is that everywhere I do studios, I do them in threes. Not just one, not just landing from a helicopter and then going away again, but I do it once, twice, 3 times. And what you do is you build up a kind of base of knowledge where one is feeding the other, and you're engaging with the local community. Number 2, I have a great interest myself, although I'm not trained in it, in ethnography and anthropology. I'm interested in power structures. I'm interested in who is leading the community, and not the person who I'm told leads the community. So I want to try and understand. So I spend a lot of time trying to understand leadership. And sometimes who the city manager thinks the leader is actually isn't the leader. And you have to do a lot of kind of underground thinking. And I always like to communicate with them. And you know, the blue box, the group here knows about the idea of developing exhibitions, developing ways that can go back to the people that you're studying. And then thirdly, on a very humble level, that I've always tried to do in my studios, it's not always possible, is I make the students do public service as part of the studio visit. It works in some places, not others. For example, when we're in Bangkok, we try and do some part of the river cleanup. We force them into kayak, start taking plastic bags out of the river. It's a very small thing. It's a very humble thing. You know, you're not really going to make much impact, but it gets the students who are graduate students from the United States, although they are from many countries, to actually engage on doing something for the community, however humble. And I actually insist that all my studios have public service. The DMZ was very difficult. We couldn't really get them to go and pick up mines. You know, that's not good. So I think in that way, but I think in the end, I would ask you to think about your host university, your host institution, that their job is to serve the communities with truth and knowledge.
Yeah. I think that's a very good question, and I think it's actually also a difficult one, actually. Of course, I think for all the studios, or most of the studios that we advise or supervise, we would advise the students to go out and talk to the local communities nearby. However, I think in the case of brownfields, it is different from other kind of type of projects. One thing I think, as Neil mentioned at the beginning of his talk, this still kind of a rare word, I think, to most of the residents. So we realize that sometimes, although they are impacted and they live next to a brownfield, but they are already used to it. So even you talk to them, they probably didn't realize what are the risks and challenges they face. And the other thing is, when students go out to talk to them, it might also raise a hope or expectation that, so are you going to do something to this site now? Is there like a plan or anything? And sometimes the local governments would actually be sensitive to that. And then I think the students also need to be cautious about the concept of green gentrification. Because, for example, when we take students to regenerated sites, so the sites already have new use or new functions, and sometimes you would realize that, you know, for these type of sites, the community that's next to the site is already not the original community that lived next to the brownfield sites. So it has become a richer kind of upper class community that's lived to a newly regenerated site. So I think the students need to understand what is a local community, how do you define the term, and what's the complexity behind it. And I would actually, at the end of answering this question, to expand the kind of concept of community from local to a more general public, because I do think that the more I get delved into the field of brownfields, I felt like it's so critical for the general public to understand more about brownfields, the risks as well as the potentials. So it's not that when they realize these sites have pollutions and then suddenly they get so frightened, oh, we don't touch it, it cannot be used. It's not like that. It just has to be remediated scientifically in the right way. So some recent efforts my team did is actually we were invited to participate the Shenzhen Hong Kong Biennale that was held, and is actually opened more to the general public. So we had a booth, we called it From Brown to Green is More Than Color. So I think it's very interesting that we're trying to use boards, models, and then the videos to show as a storyline to the general public to see the potential. And we actually organized a public events at the end, the closing of the kind of activity. And I was very impressed that many publics volunteered to participate, and there are parents taking their child, and the child got on stage and shared that, oh, we used to live next to a brownfields along the Yangtze River, and then there were also urban planners who worked in these subjects. So it really kind of encouraged me. So I think this is actually a very important effort. I think we as academicians shall put more kind of energy and effort into, I think, so that when we later on to really talk with the local communities, we can have the sort of more same understanding.
In fact, I absolutely agree with what Professor Shang has said. And in fact, there is a term now that is evolving in ethnography, which is a study of human societies, called cultural remediation. So it's in addition to the remediation of soil and water and air and stone and buildings, culture, the remediation of the culture. And it uses different techniques, but maybe it will become 50% as important as the site remediation, cultural remediation, and you use techniques of anthropology actually. But that's a field that's starting to evolve right now.
Okay, I think it is for today, and thanks to all the speakers for your talks and the insights. And thanks to IFLA APR and Chestnut for the organization. Thanks to Dongtou government and officials who help us set in the room. And thanks to all those who provided comments and grateful message for our session, and everyone who is staying with us. Thanks for all your attention. And looking forward to see you in Milan in October. Yeah, okay.